The morning of December 7, 1941, dawned warm and quiet over Pearl Harbor. The tropical sun shimmered across the still water, and gulls drifted lazily above the ships anchored in the harbor. Most of the men aboard the battleships were just waking up, as some getting ready for Sunday breakfast, others writing letters home. For many, it was a rare, peaceful morning in paradise. For one man, Samuel Dawson, it was just another day in the belly of the USS West Virginia, surrounded by the smell of oil, steel, and salt water. Sam was a machinist's mate, a quiet man of 34 with hands made rough from years of work. He had joined the Navy not for glory but to serve, to fix things, to keep engines alive. He was known among the crew as dependable, humble, and endlessly patient. When something broke, Sam fixed it, and no fuss, no noise, just calm focus. He rarely went topside. He preferred the rhythm of the machines, the heartbeats of the ship beneath his fingers. That morning, as the others joked about breakfast or last night's poker game, Sam was tightening bolts on a fuel line deep in the engine room. He hummed softly to himself, the song barely audible over the hum of machinery. At 7:55 a.m., the first explosion shattered the calm. The deck above shuddered violently, a deep metallic roar echoing through the ship. Tools rattled off shelves, and a wrench clattered from Sam's hand. For a brief second, everyone froze. Then came the unmistakable sound of screaming metal bombs, torpedoes, and chaos. A sailor burst through the hatch, his face pale. "We're under attack. Japanese planes everywhere," he shouted. Before the words fully sank in, another explosion rocked the ship, and the lights flickered out. Sam's instincts took over. He shouted for the men to grab flashlights and head toward the damage control stations. The air was thick with the smell of burning oil and smoke. Somewhere above, the West Virginia had taken a torpedo hit to the port side. The ship was flooding fast. Sam's heart pounded, but his hands stayed steady. He moved through the corridors, barking orders with quiet authority, checking compartments, helping seal off flooded sections. He knew the ship better than anyone else down there. He had spent years crawling through its guts. The noise was deafening now. Explosions above, water rushing in below, the hiss of steam lines rupturing. Men coughed and shouted in the dark. One young sailor, barely 20, froze at a hatchway as water surged in. "Move!" Sam yelled, grabbing the boy by the collar and dragging him clear. They sealed the hatch just before the corridor filled with black water. The boy looked at him, eyes wide. "We're trapped," he whispered. Sam gave him a firm nod. Not yet. The intercom was dead. The only sounds were the deep groans of the dying ship and the screams from above deck. Sam knew they had to get topside, but the main passageways were blocked. He gathered the few men who remained at F5, maybe six, and led them through maintenance shafts that twisted like veins through the hull. Smoke and heat pressed in from every side. They crawled through narrow spaces slick with oil, flashlights cutting weak cones of light through the dark. Sam's lungs burned, but he kept moving. In one compartment, they found 3 men trapped under debris. The floor was tilting. The ship was beginning to list. Sam and another sailor, Petty Officer Jenkins, heaved against the twisted metal until their muscles screamed. One man was unconscious, blood on his forehead. Sam tore a strip from his own sleeve, tied a makeshift bandage, and lifted the man onto his shoulder. "We're getting you out," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. The path ahead was nearly blocked by wreckage. Jenkins found a crowbar, and together they forced open a half-crushed hatch, the metal screeching as it gave way. When they emerged into a corridor closer to the deck, the heat hit them like a furnace. The ship's fuel tanks had been ruptured, and oil fires burned across the water outside. Through a shattered porthole, Sam caught a glimpse of the sky filled with Japanese planes, black crosses against the backdrop of smoke and flame. Battleship Row was a nightmare of destruction. The Arizona burning, the Oklahoma capsized, men diving into the flaming harbor to escape the inferno. Sam had no time to take it in. He turned back to his men. "We get to the upper deck," he said. "Anyone who can't walk, you carry." They fought their way up through twisted ladders and collapsing bulkheads. At one point, a blast threw Sam off his feet, and his head slammed against a wall. Dazed, ears ringing, he pushed himself up, blinking through the smoke. The others were shouting, trying to pull him forward. He waved them on. "Go, get topside." But when he saw one of them hesitate, he forced a grin. "I'll be right behind you." He wasn't lying, but he knew he might not make it out. There were still men trapped below. He could hear a faint banging on pipes, muffled voices calling for help. He turned and went back down. Jenkins shouted after him, but Sam didn't stop. In the lower compartments, the water was waist deep, rising fast. The emergency lights flickered red against the smoke. Sam followed the sounds of tapping until he reached the sealed hatch. He pounded on it, and someone pounded back. The wheel was jammed. He strained against it, his muscles trembling, but it wouldn't budge. He looked around desperately and spotted a crowbar wedged in the corner. He jammed it into the wheel and forced it with all his strength. The hatch gave way, and 3 soaked sailors stumbled out, coughing and gasping for air. "This way," Sam shouted, leading them up the flooding corridor. He was moving slower now. Exhaustion was setting in, but adrenaline pushed him forward. When they reached the next level, a burst of fire blocked their escape route. The heat was unbearable. One of the sailors panicked, trying to run through, but Sam pulled him back. "No." The side passage, he knew, a maintenance tunnel that ran behind the boiler room, cramped, but it might still be intact. They crawled through on hands and knees, smoke stinging their eyes. Halfway through, a section of the tunnel collapsed, blocking their path. The only way forward was through a narrow opening underwater. Sam looked at the men. "Hold your breath and follow me," he said. "Don't stop, no matter what." He took a deep breath and dove in, pushing through the cold, dark water. His shoulders scraped metal, and his chest burned for air, but he kept moving until his hands found another opening. He surfaced, gasping, and turned back. One by one, the others emerged, coughing and sputtering, but alive. He had saved them again. They reached the deck just as another wave of bombs struck. The world erupted in light and sound. Shrapnel tore through the air. Sam threw himself over a wounded man as debris rained down around them. When the smoke cleared, the deck was a scene from hell. Men running, shouting, some diving overboard to escape the flames. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burning oil and gunpowder. Sam helped lower the wounded over the side, using a length of rope to steady them. "Get to the water, swim for shore," he shouted. One young sailor hesitated, eyes wide with fear. "I can't swim." Sam didn't hesitate. "Then you're staying with me," he said. He tied the rope around them both and lowered them together into the oily water. The surface was slick and burning in places, but he kicked hard, pushing them away from the ship. They drifted toward a small cluster of survivors clinging to debris. Planes still roared overhead, strafing the harbor. Sam shielded the boy with his body until the gunfire passed. They made it to a rescue boat that was hauling survivors from the water. Sam pushed the boy aboard and tried to climb in after him, but his strength was gone. "Get him to shore," he rasped. "Go." The crew reached out to pull him in, but another explosion rocked the harbor, sending a wave that slammed him against the hull. When they looked again, he was gone beneath the smoke and waves. Hours later, the attack ended. The harbor burned into the night, fires reflecting on the black water. Rescue teams searched through the wreckage, pulling men from the oily depths. They found dozens who spoke of the same Mana, a machinist who had kept them calm, led them through the dark, saved their lives. "He had grease on his hands," one survivor said. His name was Sam. Just Sam. But of Samuel Dawson, there was no trace. In the days that followed, the names of famous officers and pilots filled the newspapers. The stories of valor and loss spread across America. But in the lists of the fallen, Samuel Dawson's name was just one among thousands, and no photo, no headlines, just another sailor lost at sea. His wife back home in Kansas received a letter from the Navy weeks later, missing in action. She wept, holding the folded paper as if it could bring him back. Years passed, the war ended, the wrecks of Pearl Harbor became memorials, silent witnesses to the morning that changed history. The USS West Virginia was raised, repaired, and returned to duty, but much of the old ship remained a grave for those who never escaped. Sam's name faded into history, remembered only by the few who had survived because of him. Decades later, in 1974, a team of divers exploring the remains of the West Virginia found something unexpected. Buried beneath a layer of silt and rusted metal in an old compartment was a small, corroded toolbox. Inside, among the wrenches and screwdrivers, was a name etched into the lid: S. Dawson. The divers carefully brought it to the surface, the letters still faintly visible through the corrosion. News of the find reached the Navy archives, and for a brief moment, the name resurfaced. An old man named Jenkins, long retired and one of the few survivors still alive, was shown a photograph of the toolbox. He smiled sadly and nodded. "That's him," he said softly. "That's the man who saved my life." He told the story again of the smoke, the fire, the calm voice and the darkness. "He never panicked," Jenkins said. "He just kept us moving. I don't think he ever thought about himself, only the rest of us." In time, a small plaque was added near the memorial for the West Virginia, in memory of Samuel Dawson, machinist's mate, USS West Virginia. A true hero whose courage saved many, though history forgot his name. Visitors who stopped to read it didn't know the man, but they felt something in those simple words, a quiet reminder that heroism isn't always found in medals or headlines. Sometimes it's in the hands that fix what's broken, in the hearts that stay calm when the world burns, in the souls who give everything so others may live. On quiet mornings at Pearl Harbor, when the sun rises over the calm water, you can almost imagine him there again down in the engine room, listening to the heartbeat of the ship, unaware that history was about to remember the man who never asked to be remembered. The sea still holds his secret, but his story lives on in the echoes of those he saved. The unsung hero of Pearl Harbor.